Well, good morning. Hello and welcome to a Vikings Territory Breakdown podcast with myself, Joe Oberle, senior writer at vikingsterritory.com and purpleptsd.com. And that's Mark Craig, NFL insider, Vikings writer, Hall of Fame selector from the Star Tribune and startribune.com. Mark, it's finally over. Depending on the where you decamp in the Vikings fandom, that was an end to a bad season, or it was a victory Monday since they moved up one spot in their draft selection.
I guess I'd be more excited about them lifting themselves in the draft when they start drafting a little better than they've been doing. But I don't know.
Yeah.
To me, it's I would always want to try and win these games because if you look at what's happened to this team the past month, I mean, these are the kind of things that, Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell are safe. They deserve to be safe. But if you look around the league and how quickly guys are coming and going, the Wilfs are very patient. But this one's going to leave a mark. You don't end the year with what's happened to them within the division and have it be like, hey, guys, appreciate your culture. Appreciate that you finished first in the players' niceness category and all that stuff, but you better start, winning some games and picking the right players, making some right decisions, and getting this team back in the right direction.
Well, yeah, there's plenty to talk about there and what you're speaking about. They did win some games last year. I don't know if you remember, they did win 13 games, and this is just, they lost their starting quarterback this year and didn't have the answer behind him after that. The defense did improve. The turnovers were truly remarkable. They were I think you were writing about it in the paper yesterday in your 5 extra points about historic turnovers for this team. I think they were 3 short of the record in 2019, maybe at 37. They had 34.
Oh, that's not their record. No, that's not their record. They used to. That was the most since 2013, which or 2010s when they had 37. Since then, they haven't anything higher than 32. The minus 12 is where you're looking at because way back in the 60s, Joe, the ball used to go back and forth. There was like 50 some turnovers back in the 60s and stuff, stuff like that. But being minus 12 is ties for 5th in 2013, the year Leslie got fired. The 34 is the most since 2010 when Childress got fired. I'd buy what you're saying about, they lost their quarterback. Yeah. I mean, there's too many examples of where they were and they could win games and they would be in the playoffs. They didn't need to win 12 games. They just needed to when they're in field goal range in Cincinnati, kick the field goal and not throw 2 interceptions, score more than 12 points against the Bears. They were so close. I mean, I would, if they lose their quarterback and then, and this is a league where everyone's, everyone isn't so like packed in together, I'd buy it. But there's too many examples of every team has injuries, and there's a team right now that in Cleveland that played 4 quarterbacks, turned the ball over 37 times, and you could say, well, they got the great defense. Well, okay, the Vikings at different stages of this season, a big chunk of this season, had the ability to stop teams, and they were doing it, and the offense kept throwing it away. So they were close enough where they should be where the Packers are right now, the 7th spot, maybe the 6th spot. And to me, it's not acceptable. I don't just wash my hands and say, we lost Kirk. There were issues on this team that go beyond losing Kirk.
Certainly there were, and for me, chief among them is those turnovers, and it's something that never improved. I mean, even yesterday, it looked like Mullins was going to escape the game without multiple turnovers, and then he threw 2 crazy ones at the end of one of them he got hit, the other one was on him, just a poor pass at the end of the game. So go back to Bud Grant, who I said, those are one of the biggest factors in a winning or losing a game is turnovers. And when you cough it up that many times and that many times in the red zone and that many times in crucial situations. And that many times in each game, you're going to get beat more often than you're not, because you're playing one-score games all the time, and like they did last year, and they certainly did this year. And this year they were losing them. Even though, saying that the quarterback was an excuse. Well, it really was, because they didn't have good quarterback play behind him. It certainly was, Mark. I think if Kirk Cousins finishes the year, they do make the playoffs. They do win some of those games.
That we could talk about that all over the place. I mean,
and there's some legitimacy to it. I'm sorry,
there's some legitimacy to it, but what I'm saying is it was there for the taking. This guy threw 400. This guy threw for 411 yards against the Lions. Then he throws 4 interceptions. Kirk Cousins. And this is kind of Kirk's 8 games were kind of like a microcosm of what we talk about with Kirk. He was MVP, but he was 4-4. He had 9 turnovers in 8 games. And you could say, well, some of them weren't his fault. Well, some of them, it's not every. Yeah, they're at the end of the Chargers game. You could say, well, the defense sucked. The defense, that's when the Chargers just said the hell with the run and just passed all over them. But it's a 4-point game, and they're at the 6-yard line with 13 seconds left, and they throw an interception. Okay, Tampa Bay, they lose by 3. They give up 3. They turn the ball over 3 times in the first half, and then lose by 3. They turn the ball over 4 times. I mean, that's Mullins, but this was going on. These turnovers were going on.
I said that
well before Kirk got hurt. So again, it's this argument of you hate Kirk, you love Kirk. To me, if Kirk Cousins could come back and play for $4 million like Baker Mayfield did in Tampa Bay and leading them to the playoffs or helping them into the playoffs, sign me up. If Kirk Cousins needs $40 million and I'm at a point in building my franchise, and that is going to impact being able to the massive holes that this team has, I'm sorry. I'm looking elsewhere for something that's more affordable, and I'm drafting a quarterback.
Fine. That's fine and good. I mean, yours is speculation too. If you don't think that Kirk Cousins wins more of those games because there wasn't a drop off at quarterback, then I have to totally disagree with you. And then you couple into that, you lose the best player on your team for 7 games, and he's still without. I'm talking about Justin Jefferson, who still got 1,000 yards and playing in just 10 games this year. You lose him as well. You don't think those have, the defense wasn't ready yet. They were still learning. Brian Flores. I mean, poo-poo it all you want. These are also legitimate reasons.
Okay, I'll look at it. The Browns lost Nick Chubb, their best offensive player, in week 2. In week 2, they lost him.
Yeah,
that's their engine. That's their ability. That's their. Their guy that made their offense go. It wasn't Deshaun Watson.
Aren't we in the era when running backs are interchangeable? And I know Chubb
that's not interchangeable. And I'll tell you what, this team learned a big lesson about saying that running backs are interchangeable. All you got to do is look at what this team went from. Not saying they should have kept Dalvin Cook; he was spent. But we'll talk about it later. You have it written down, but. They majorly overestimated Alexander Madison's ability to be a starter. And then it took them till the end of the year to realize that they had a better guy behind him. So they're not interchangeable. And that's what we want to say. And it got proven emphatically. Look at Detroit. There's a reason that Gibbs is the 12th overall pick. There's a reason that Montgomery was number 1 pick in Chicago, and it was a great pickup for Detroit. It's not interchangeable.
So you're saying you're blaming Kwesi and KOC for the team they built then?
I'm saying that this team is nowhere near. How could you argue the fact that they are nowhere near right now where Detroit is, where Green Bay is, and where Chicago is heading? I don't know what Chicago's going to do at quarterback. I mean, in today's NFL, Fields is probably on his way out, and they'll probably pick Caleb Williams or whatever it is. But I'm just saying it. You can't sit here and say that, granted, they won 13 games last year. Everything went right for them. That's great. But, and this is when we were wrapping up last year, was wow, I'd feel a lot better about this season if they had won a playoff game. To me, that really was a heavy leveling of my perception of that season is the fact that you lost, a 13-win team lost at home in the playoffs, and Kirk did not lead them, in that game. Again, I'm not saying this isn't me saying that Kirk wouldn't win more games. That Kirk would win more games.
What else?
But we have an entire decade and a half of his career where he's never taken a team to beyond where it really is. He doesn't lift them above like you should with a guy making $35, $40 million a year.
Well, if you're gonna, his contract's a different discussion here. As far as
it's not.
I'm talking about how the season would have went, because you bring up 400 yards by Mullen and just let his don't focus on his interceptions. But Kirk Cousins had over 350 yards in 3 of those games and had the interceptions, but his are more important. So, I mean,
he's the guy you're giving $40 million to. He's the guy you're giving $40 million to. Frankly, we found out on this team that if you lose a quarterback of Kirk Cousins, then just don't. It's over. It doesn't have to be over. It can be a guy. It can be a guy.
Saying? They just blow it up and let him go and find somebody.
I don't know if it's
they're just sitting out there, Mark.
Well, okay, you blow it up. I mean, define blow it up. I mean, I would say that you look at that defense. That defense got blown up last year. I mean, and Danielle Hunter. We're talking about Danielle later, but you think he's going to want to come back? It's we've got to sign Danielle Hunter. We got to sign Danielle Hunter. Danielle Hunter has a choice in this matter.
He said
it's no coincidence that Danielle Hunter put in a don't franchise my rear end clause in this, because he may not want to be around getting 15 sacks on a team that doesn't make the playoffs every year.
He did say yesterday that he wants to be here, though. So does that matter?
Oh, God. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure he does. Yeah.
So I guess I'm trying to get at what you're suggesting. I mean, my only point is that they would have made the playoffs with Kirk is healthy and Jefferson. He would have come back in that Chicago game if Kirk is playing. They wouldn't have made that mistake, and they would have won. I know I can't prove it, and you can't prove they can't, so it doesn't matter.
I'm not saying they couldn't have. I'm saying that you've got to be prepared for an NFL season when everyone doesn't get to the end of the year and no one has a Band-Aid on them. I mean, people are going to get hurt.
Band-Aid on
people are going to get hurt every damn year. And every year we're going to say, oh, my God, can you believe the injuries this year? Yeah, I can believe them, because it happens every damn year. Every year. It's just, Kirk, they got extremely lucky with his durability. But he's going to be 36 years old, 36. Coming off the Achilles, and he's not going to want to give you some hometown, kumbaya hot dish Minnesota discount.
You don't think so?
I wouldn't, because there's going to be.
They're not negotiating with you.
There's going to be teams lining up to take him that are closer. This team is not like.
Why? Because he's a good quarterback?
Yes, because what I'm saying is he's a good quarterback, but he doesn't lift. He doesn't grab your team, put it on your shoulder, and take them to the next level. You've got to be like, it has to be like that. It has to be, it's always been this way. It has to be kind of like, you got to have the perfect offensive line. You got to have the perfect defense. You got to have explosive running back. You got to have the best receiver in the league, and he can do all that. He can make every throw. He's a good quarterback. He's not a great quarterback. And if you're gonna spend $40 million and not be able to plug these other holes, you're not going to get to where you need to go.
I certainly agree with that, but other teams do pay their quarterbacks that kind of money, and they somehow do it well. You got to figure that out. Now, and it's going to be tough for the Vikings because they got Jefferson to pay, and I'd love them to re-sign Danielle Hunter. So I don't know how they do it. I don't have.
You know how they do it? We'll get when we start talking about the draft. You know how they do it? I'll read off the last 3 drafts for the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, no
you've got cheap rookie talent that's in their first year of their contract.
So they draft.
It's like San Francisco, and you got Purdy, who's a freaking. It was a great system for him. He's making rookie money. He's not even. I think he's not even making $1 million this year. I mean, he's making what Kirk probably spends on dinner, and it's. Well, no, I shouldn't say that because I was going to say what he spends on shirts, but no, he spends what we spend on shirts. Yeah, that's how you do it. And to me, there's a lot of holes to fill. And it just, to me, it depends on the contract. Yes, he is good enough. He is good enough, but at a cost that is team friendly, period.
Yeah, I think so. And I got to believe he's going to finally do that. I mean, I think he found a coach that appreciates him, and he found a coach who is an offensive mind here in Minnesota that has a system that caters to a pocket passer like Kirk, who has a strong arm, is very accurate, and knows the game. So I think it's a good fit for him, but he's got to come in with a little bit of a discount at 36 years old and coming off the Achilles. So I agree with you there. There's that. I mean, that to me is a whole different thing. I'm talking about the guy was a top 5 quarterback before he got hurt this year statistically. Were the wins there? No, but I think they would have come once the defense started playing like it did midway through the season. I think you could have won some of those games that you kicked away by 1 score. So, but that's me. Is what I'm looking at over in Detroit scares me. They finally got someone who knows how to draft, who knows how to another guy who knows how to coach and motivate his players. They're going to be good for a long time. I mean, that running back, the running backs, the receivers, all their skilled players are very, very good. Their offensive line, as you pointed out in the paper, was, much better than the Vikings were yesterday. Now, granted, Vikings had 2 guys missing, but still, they were outclassed. The Vikings gave up 4 sacks and 15 pressures, I guess, which I think I read is a record number of pressures this season. So, the Vikings have so many holes. So that's what I'm saying. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they backfill this thing. And I don't know, do you think Kwesi is the man for the job? I had this going to talk about this later, but let's do it now because it sounds like that's where you're laying a lot of the blame for this season at the feet of those guys.
I don't know if it's not trending that way. I'm not saying Kwesi should be fired or anything, but my God, it's like, you have to hold people accountable whenever.
I saw Andrew Booth out there yesterday. He looked lost. That's a terrible draft pick. He was forced into play because of injuries. And, once again, Lewis Cine is not even on the field. That is a terrible draft. Now, he has some wins in his history here, short history here, but boy, there are some glaring losses for this guy. And those 2 guys are chief among them, as far as I'm concerned.
What this group is. The only thing they've proven is that because they came in and said last year, we're going to run it back. We don't think that we thought Mike Zimmer lost the team. We're thinking that this younger guy, offensive minded guy, can take basically Zimmer's team and win more games, and they did, and they won more games with it. Then they started, they started to lose. They had to get, the defense lost it, has said goodbye to Za'Darius. Well, Za'Darius wasn't Zimmer's guy, but Dalvin Tomlinson, Ken, Thielen, all these guys that they lost, and now it's becoming more and more of their team. First shot out of the gate, they tied for the Bears, the last in the division. All right, so it's not trending that way. I'm not saying that. Because Jordan Addison's a good pick.
Ivan Pace is a good pickup.
Ivan Pace, but that's you want to be able to hit. Yeah, Ivan Pace did a wonderful job, and I maybe he's a starter next year. Maybe if their drafts were better, he doesn't start. I don't know. I'm just saying that you look at the last. Brad Holmes has had 3 drafts. 2020. I mean, just look at the defensive guys. Hutchinson, obviously, he's a number 2 overall. So, but I've seen a lot of teams miss on it, especially the Lions have missed. There was a stretch there where they draft a receiver in the top 10 every year, and he was a bust almost every year. Edge rusher Josh Pascal is 2021. Panay Sewell, that right tackle, is one of the best in the league.
Yep.
Defensive tackle Aleem McNeil, safety the Mela Fonwu, linebacker Derek Barnes. So right there's three guys right there off your 2021 for his first draft. All right. Then next year they have Hutchinson. They get Jamison Williams, which is a guy who's advancing. Not only is he advancing his career, but he also, that trade with the Vikings that they use on that pick on, puts the Vikings at the bottom of the draft. And we've talked ad nauseum about all the players they missed between that and where they picked Lewis Cine.
Although Williamson hasn't done as well in his 2 years that Jordan Addison did.
Jamison Williams, I'll take him over Lewis Cine.
No, I'm talking about another receiver the Vikings did pick up.
Well, the next year.
Yeah.
But Josh Pascal, edge rusher, safety Kirby Joseph. So that's 2022. So that's 3 more. That's 6 defensive starters in 2 years. Jeez. And then 2023, they get Gibbs, they get Campbell, who everyone laughed at. Gibbs, they laughed at. Laporta, they laughed at. And then Branch, is their nickel guy. That's basically he's a starter. So that's 8 starters and 3 defensive drafts. You put 11 on the field, okay? Let's do the math. And so then, Kwesi, his first 3 of his first 4 picks were on defense. They needed help defense. They had given up 475 points a game or for the season. Terrible defense. Zimmer did, they lost the ability to pay defensive players, so Zimmer gets fired. That first one, the 3 of them, Lewis Cine, of course, Andrew Booth, Brian Asamoah. Was Lewis Cine active yesterday? Probably not.
I don't think so.
Booth had to play.
He was active, but he didn't play.
Booth had to play because they were out of everybody. Yeah. Asamoah, we all know what happened there. It's like he went from going to be the next Eric Kendricks to getting replaced by a undrafted free agent. So that's not like, this is not subject. This isn't subjective stuff. This is all objective looking at.
Okay, let me put one. Go ahead, finish.
That's where the Lions are. That's where the Vikings are.
Now, granted, when they got a new coach and GM in there, they committed to a rebuild. There's a reason why you have 8 starters in those drafts, because there was an empty shelves there when they got there. Okay, the Vikings were trying to take the core that they had and backfill around it. Those are 2 different philosophies. So I'm not saying I'm saying the Lions have done very, very well. Don't get me wrong.
With cheap rookie players. And these aren't all first-round draft picks. These are guys, and I just read to you what Kwesi did.
And I agree with you. I'm just saying that the opportunity was there. There's 2 different philosophies, Mark.
Call it a rebuild. Don't call it a rebuild. Everybody wants, that if you don't tear it down to the studs, then you can never win, because you're not. I'm just saying the draft there's a reason there's a draft. It's to help the teams that that are to get back on top, and you can't miss picks like.
No, you
can't. You cannot do what you did and get Lewis Cine and have all those players go off the board. You cannot do it. There's once.
No argument here on that.
Yeah,
I am not happy with what I saw to Andrew Booth yesterday. I couldn't quite believe it. The fact that Seton doesn't even get on the field speaks volumes. And so I guess it comes back to me to say, is Kwesi up for the job? I don't know that he is, because he has made some pickups. I thought the trade for Chandler or for Hawkinson was good, but I think he gave up too much because he helped build Detroit over there with that draft. I don't think the trade with Green Bay was good for the Vikings, but here we are. I think this is the most important offseason for him in his career. If he does not hit the in a manner that you're describing over in Detroit, he should be gone. And I say that often about anybody. I don't know. I'm not a judge of who are good or good not, because sometimes it's a crapshoot. But good Lord, there's just too many misses, and you can see it. You saw it yesterday. The difference between these 2 teams. We're not even close.
I would agree. And I think where it might buy him another year is I feel like if they do go the Kirk route, which I don't think they will at $40 million. I don't think they will. I think it's got to be something that's affordable that they can make some moves in addition to that. It can't just be sign Kirk and here we go, because it's not going to work. But in addition to Kirk, or there has to be a quarterback drafted, and they have to. The plan, right. The next plan has to be put in place, so that maybe that is a guy who has to sit for a year or whatever, and that takes you away from getting some other more impactful players. I just feel like, my goodness, it's got to happen.
Yeah,
it has to be. There has to be something besides, going 500 and below 500 and hoping Kirk's healthy, and then giving him another $100 million and then doing it all over again. And it's just there's got to be something better than that. And but right, the bottom line is he's not doing himself any favors right now. I don't think. The Wilfs are extremely patient.
Yeah, they are.
Spielman got more time than he probably would have gotten anywhere else other than Pittsburgh or New England.
And he got a new job this morning. But anyway, we'll talk about
what's he doing.
They fired Ron Rivera out in Washington, and they brought in Spielman and some other guy to do the next search for a coach.
That's weird.
Some guy from the NBA.
Maybe you'll hire Zim. Zim wants back in.
That's what I was going to say. That was my joke I had teed up.
Bring the band back together.
It just goes to even to further the point about Detroit, who the Vikings played yesterday, and I'll class them twice in 3 weeks here. They made that trade for Matthew Stafford. Was that this regime that traded Stafford to the Rams and got in Jared Goff? And at the time, I'm thinking, what are they doing? Goff had gone to a Super Bowl, but I don't think he's the quarterback Matthew Stafford is. And they did that, and Stafford goes out and wins the Super Bowl in LA. So they made the right move. But they got all these draft picks. I think it's like, what a freaking great move. So shouldn't the Vikings then sign Kirk for whatever he wants and then trade his behind and get a boatload of picks?
That's interesting. I don't know that. I probably would have done that type of trade for maybe Stafford, but maybe not Kirk. But then in hindsight, Stafford, was a guy that was 0-3 in the playoffs.
Right.
That's one of the greatest trades. Will probably turn out to be one of the greatest trades for both sides. And the Rams they're playing with house money. They got it.
Yeah.
And as much as I would love to see the Lions win this week, don't you just feel Stafford coming back into that with those receivers and kind of how Detroit's playing defensively now against the pass?
I think that's why I got teed up to a night game for a national audience.
That'll be poor Detroit's luck. But the bottom line is, last year it even had when the Vikings got to the end, it had a feeling of, well, they're gonna have to replace a lot of guys. There's a lot of older guys. What do you the quarterback's getting older, stuff like that. Whereas the Lions, it's like, this is still a young. I think they're 10th youngest team in the league.
Yeah.
The quarterbacks, I think, turning 30.
The Packers and the Bears are both some of the youngest. The Vikings are in trouble right now.
So it's like, you have a different feeling about it, even if they lose, as a number 3 seed like the Vikings did last year. There's a different feeling, at least to me, that where the Lions are going next year, as opposed to, what's going to happen to the Vikings in 2023.
Yeah, if Laporta doesn't play next weekend, the Lions are in a bit of trouble. Well, anyway, we better regroup. Mike, got to get Mike Woldham, our producer, to come in here and get the paddles for me before I have a heart attack, because I'm getting a little lathered up here, and so is Mark. Us old guys can't take this kind of stuff. See, that's what you do to us Vikings. Anyway, we'll take a quick break. Come on back and for more of this fun and frivolity at the end of the Vikings 2023 season. Come on back. Okay, welcome back to Vikings Territory Breakdown podcast. Mark Craig from the Star Tribune. We are rehashing the season that was. It's funny, we've already gone half the show and we haven't even talked about the game yesterday and how they performed, because A, it didn't mean anything, and B, the Vikings they started out slow on defense, looked really bad, but they, I'll give them credit. They fought back to win. But when your highlight is a 3rd and 30 pass for 32 yards to Johnny Munt, that dynamo of a tight end, I about jumped out of my chair laughing, because the Vikings have had that kind of thing done to them so many times in the past, but it usually costs them a game. 3rd and 30, what a play. But, Nick Mullins, I think you and I were texting back and forth, probably playing for his NFL life yesterday, because he was giving it us all. And if you saw him in the press conference after, he was in tears. He was emotional about it. He played hard, and the man just doesn't know how to die to live another day or something like that. He will throw it even when he's fallen over or whatever. It's his reputation, and he does it again yesterday. But anyway, what'd you think of Nick Mullins? Is he the guy we get next year when they let Kirk go, as according to you from last segment, Mark?
No, I mean, Nick Mullins probably did enough. In 3 starts, the guy threw for 1,100 yards.
Yeah.
But he also threw 8 interceptions.
8
interceptions. 0-3. I feel like Nick probably, unlike Christian Ponder, who went to Green Bay at that one fateful primetime game and was forced to play and exposed himself for one last time and was basically out of the league after that. Nick Mullins probably he'll find someone that will say, hey, I'd like to take a chance. Nick Mullins has experience, threw for a bazillion yards in 2023 as a backup. But for my team, I've seen enough. And if I lose my starting quarterback, it's the replacement's not going to be Nick Mullins. I would rather it be a rookie who's working his way up to maybe they're hoping he's be a starter sometime. I would rather see Joshua Dobbs. I don't know what he'll cost. I wouldn't pay much for him, but Nick Mullins would. I like Nick. He's a nice guy, but he proved to me beyond a doubt that I wouldn't want him as my backup quarterback if my starter gets hurt again.
He threw a couple passes into some tight windows that were pretty good. And then again, he had Justin Jefferson to throw to, and he also just threw some panic passes. Which wouldn't go down and those to me are more of a problem than his ability to hit into some windows, because it doesn't happen enough. I mean, I think if you got guys like Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson you're throwing to, and even Hawkinson until this week, you're gonna rack up some yards. You're gonna make some points. I mean, Justin Jefferson's gonna get open like he did for a touchdown. Jordan Addison should have had 2. He stopped, kind of stopped short of one. I mean, that's gonna happen. I don't think Nick Mullins is the guy going forward.
You know why Jordan? I mean, I kind of laugh because Jordan Addison instinctively, I think, stopped and looked back because he was expecting the ball to be underthrown, and then it was thrown perfectly, and it surprised the hell out of him, and he had to try and jump for it. Nick Mullins, the lack of consistent NFL caliber arm strength is alarming, and he displayed some more of it. Some better arm strength yesterday. Yeah, but like I said, the one caught Addison off guard. He was just expecting to have to turn around and fight for it, and then there it goes over his head. To me, it's there's things there that if he has a place in the league with 32 teams, everybody looking for backups and number 3s and all that stuff. But I wouldn't want him as my primary backup going forward. This has got to be a whether it's Kirk or it's someone else that's cheaper. It was a bridge to the future quarterback. Nick's just wouldn't be in the cards for me.
You wrote about the running game. You thought it wasn't improved. Chandler looked good in spots. He had 12 rushes for 69 yards, like a 5.8 average, which wasn't bad. Is that discovery of their running back? Should that be over now? And Chandler is the guy, or what do you think about how they did with the running game this year?
Well, that was as I wrote in the paper, that was O'Connell's, for all the anti-Zim that he had, mojo that he has going, his priority was to be a more efficient running team. he wasn't going to go and have. He didn't want a 2,000-yard rusher or run the ball 50 times a game, but he wanted a more efficient running game, and he whiffed. I mean, big time whiff. It was like it's contributed mightily to where their offense, the inability to win with a backup. The 7 rushing touchdowns tied for 1996 and 1962 as the lowest non-strike year rushing touchdowns. 393 attempts, and we're talking about another game. We're only 2 or 3 years into a 17-game season. 393 attempts were the 7th fewest in franchise history, non-strike. 1,553 yards, 8th fewest. The 3.95 average, 4th lowest since 97. It's a myriad of reasons. They don't have the power that you need up front to run the ball. And that to me is probably the bedrock difference. Picking players and all this stuff is the Lions and the 49ers and all these teams that the Vikings have to crawl past all have start with the ability to control a game with their offensive line. And, so O'Connell probably doesn't have that interior that he needs to be a powerful team, but he could have been more efficient. The overestimation of Madison as a starting running back, we all said, he could be a starter anywhere else. Well, I don't have the same resume that would qualify me to make that decision if I'm working for a team, and they missed on that. And then it took them until 4 games were left in the season, basically, before they said, hey, or they realized or turned to the guy that could be the guy who could average 5.8 a game. That wasn't like a dominant running game performance for him, but you give him the ball 12 times, he averages almost 6 yards a carry. That's what you're looking for. Doesn't matter that it's only 69 yards, 70 yards. Mm-hmm. It's the average. It's the keeping the chains moving. So yeah, that was a major big miss by Kevin and in getting this team to where they wanted to be.
Yeah, it's too bad because you make the point that it was important to KOC's offense that they had a running game and never materialized. Thank God they do have a passing game when Jefferson is in the lineup, and boy, oh boy, he was phenomenal yesterday. There, it gets so bad with him. It gets to the point where the defenders putting their hands over Jefferson's eyes when he's coming in, and it's still not called, but we won't go there. Jefferson had 12 receptions for 192 yards and a touchdown, and he reaches 1,000 yards despite missing 7 games this year. It's pretty phenomenal about the player he is, and if they can't keep him and Cousins both, see you, Kirk. Thanks. See ya. Because Jefferson is just so much fun to watch. His catching radius, his ability to beat 1 or 2 defenders. It doesn't always happen, but boy, oh boy, he's something else. And you can pretty much have any quarterback out there, and he's gonna make your numbers better than they would have been.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with him, he had never missed a game until this year. So, and he's like, I think they flashed it on TV. He was only the 3rd to have 1,000 yards in 10 games or fewer. So, what he did was amazing. But hopefully, going forward, he stays healthy because you don't make the Hall of Fame missing 7 games, with a hamstring injury. And I think he probably missed more than he needed to miss it. I'll still say that he missed the Bears game. Just because it was the bye week was next week, and hey, we think we can beat the Bears, and that's
can't prove that though. I'd like to somebody get on record about that because it was.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can. No one's going to say that, but I think about four seconds after the Bears game was over, that was when they said we're gonna activate him for the 3-week window to come back.
Oh, God.
And then he was fine, but yeah. He's not going anywhere. I mean, they have the ability. He had 1 more year on him, and then they have the ability to franchise him. And it'd be interesting to see for his standpoint, that was a good jolt of reminder of how good he is. Hey, look what I did. But he's going to get paid. They're going to try to pay Daniil Hunter. You can't pay them all. I don't know where Kirk fits in all of this. This is going to be an amazing offseason to watch.
Yeah,
how they shape it, and Kirk could maybe be a hero if he said, because I thought I saw somewhere where Baker Mayfield his market value is like $16 million a year. If that's the case, and Kirk wants 40, and Baker could take 16, sign me up for Baker Mayfield.
Whew. No thanks, but
I think Baker Mayfield on this team, granted, Baker and there's been the year he played hurt, he kind of embarrassed himself with his inability to throw and some weird, especially here in Minnesota, he had a horrible game. But you talk about a leader, a guy that's going to give you everything you have, and it's going to get hot and help. He helped the Buccaneers get into the playoffs. I'm saying it comes down to financials. If you can take him for cheap, and like the Buccaneers did, and you build around him, you can go farther than you can, like just having a quarterback and nothing else.
Okay, I'm going to remind you of that later on when we see Baker Mayfield in the playoffs. But he's
probably going to beat the Eagles on Monday. So
he might. Boy, those guys are struggling. The one thing that JJ should maybe be doing is doing receiver passes. That play didn't work out. That old chestnut that KOC keeps hauling out. You had said to me they put that one in the can, and I kind of agree with you. Sometimes I think he tries to get more cute than he needs to, but maybe it's because he doesn't have a rushing game that he can just pound the rock. He's got to do something else. I don't know. But
yeah, he has spent some time this year, outsmarting himself. Denver being my favorite example of that, that first third down where Hawkinson pitches it to Dobbs, stuff like that. It doesn't get blocked well. I mean, they was it Munt or Oliver, one of the tight ends, I think did an Ole, and Jefferson. I think they ruled it a sack, but then they changed it to a run because it happened so quickly that they weren't sure if it was a end around or if it was a pass. But maybe they just keep playing, put him in a preseason, they have him complete one of those so that they can O'Connell can get what he's looking for and get it over with.
I got to talk a bit quickly here about some of the defense because that's a big thing. And just your thoughts on this. Obviously, Brian Flores told the defense to tank, didn't he, this year? Is that
of course? His record is he gives up, right? He loves giving up.
The Vikings lost 5 of their last 6. The points that he gave, this defense gave up in the last 3 or 4 games is amazing because they were the 5th best in the league through the middle part of the season when they finally got it together. Now at the end here, they've dropped down to near last again in points they've given up. What happened to this defense? And is this Brian's way of hey, don't come calling, I'm staying another year here?
To me, it's a complimentary. We could say, the defense. They were as soon as they flashed that thing in Cincinnati, that graphic that said hadn't given up a touchdown in 166 minutes.
No kidding.
Highest in the NFL. It was like boom, boom, boom. But in saying that, these are games that they could have won if the offense wasn't throwing the ball away. I think they gave up 65 points off turnovers, not including the pick 6, which doesn't go on the defense. I thought that for the positions that they were put in throughout the season, I thought the defense played well enough to be a playoff defense. Now, granted, toward the end here, they're no Murphy. Caleb Evans is getting benched all the time. You're forced to play Booth. So there was a lot of that. He's fighting with his hands handcuffed behind his back, pretty much. Wonham gets hurt. Davenport's a disaster.
Never shows up. Yes.
But I feel like this is a team that I believe that when they beat the Falcons at one point had a 1st and goal at the 1 off a takeaway, and they kicked the field goal.
Yeah.
Denver gave up they give up 9 points on 3 bad turnovers against Denver. They come within 6 points of beating the Lions at home, but they throw the ball. They throw four interceptions. Kirk throwing the interception at the goal line at the end of the Chargers game. So, the defense did not did not finish strong, but I just can't beat them up too much because of the positions that it was put in just every single week.
Read the tea leaves for me. Was that the last game for Harrison Smith as a Viking or even as an NFL player?
I don't know. I don't see how he comes back. I mean, he sure sounded like I wasn't at the game, but reading the quotes from the locker room, it sounds like he's ready to hang it up. But that's a financial that falls in with the Eric Kendricks, the guys that were let go last year. Looking for his, I think it's like a $19 million cap number for next year.
Ooh, ouch.
If he's released, it's an $11 million savings. Whereas it sounds a lot like what they were going through with Thielen, about the same type of numbers, I think. But it'd be like a $7 million dead cap money. I don't see how it, that he comes back, and gonna miss him. He's a hell of a player, really good leader. Kind of he's not a rah guy, obviously, but just a rock solid player for a lot of years.
Yeah, he has. I enjoyed covering him too, and he isn't the most talkative guy, but boy, when he says what he says, you're going to listen because he's going to give you the straight scoop, and he's going to be he's going to be decent behind the microphone. He's the kind of guy. Maybe I don't know if he's got that ability in him, but he's the kind of guy that you would think would be a really good coach, at some level because he knows the game so well, and he kind of been running the game back there. But I don't know. I think he really enjoyed playing with Flores, and I hope they would both be back next year. But, he's probably at the cap number. It's probably going to be tough to do so. I know you wrote about Marcus Davenport, and I couldn't agree more. I'm so disappointed in how that worked out. The Vikings' big offseason free agency signing. It was just a total bust this year. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, I went and looked at the free agents from last year, and he got a 1-year deal for $13 million. So there were 16 players that averaged $13 million a year in free agency last year, the UFAs. So, just looking at, I mean, some of them are like, Jimmy Garoppolo. That's a bust. I mean, I'm sure that the Raiders don't want to have that hanging over their head going forward. But to me, when you're looking at production and just being on the field, the other 15 averaged like almost close to 800 snaps for the season, averaged 15 games in the season. And here comes Davenport, 118 snaps as a Viking, which will be his only snaps as a Viking, 4 games. There was that flash of like one game where he had the sacks, but that you just whenever you go into an offseason and you are so salary cap, you're strapped. You can't make that many moves. This is your one move to give Flores a pressure guy, and you completely whiff on it. And you could say, well, you got injured. Well, the MO on this guy was injuries, underachiever, and what'd he do? He got hurt and he underachieved. And so, there were red flags, and I don't know what, the analytics said or whatever. He's the 26-year-old guy who's a former number 1 pick. So everybody thought we can do it. We can be the team to do it.
Yep.
And they got burned, and it hurt them. It hurt them on their salary cap. It hurt them on the field. The only good thing about it is it was a 1-1 and done. And, as soon as they wrap up the paperwork, he's probably not even at TCO, but it'd be like, go find the next team to take a chance on you.
Hopefully that's Cleveland next year. Just kidding.
They did pretty good with Tomlinson. And the other point would be when they traded Za'Darius made $1.5 million less than Davenport made. He played 16. He started 16 games, It wasn't a dominant. He had like 6 sacks, but on the other end of Myles Garrett, that's an important position.
That's painful.
So yeah, it's and at $13 million was the same as what Preston Smith made in Green Bay, and Carl Granderson in New Orleans, guys that had 8.5, 8 sacks.
So that's the kind of way you're going to respond to my shots at Cleveland. You're just going to keep this stuff at me.
Yeah, if you're missing the draft and you miss on your number one free agent, there's going to be problems.
Yes, there is. They got to sign one of them back. I hope they sign Hunter back. I don't know how they do it all, but quickly, cornerback Caleb Evans regressed. I heard Ron Johnson say on K-Fan yesterday. He thought that they were asking him to play too much man, where he's more of a taller guy who. I didn't know quite how he described it, but he might, because of all the injury problems, he was doing stuff that maybe he's not suited to best for his abilities or stature. But really, really disappointed because all I hoped for him was to stay healthy this year, because he had the concussion problems last year, because he flashed like he was somebody good they got in the draft, and boy, he just didn't quite have the season that he maybe promised he was going to have.
No, I mean, Ron Johnson's got a good resume going. I mean, he beat the Buckeyes back in 2000 whenever I guaranteed victory. When they spanked the Buckeyes in Columbus, which I think I've talked to him about a few times. But yeah, he looked like Evans looks like a guy, like a corner who's not good in man coverage. So if you're a corner and you're not good in man coverage, that's a problem. It's Mekhi Blackman was out.
Murphy was out.
It's a huge priority, but there's a lot of big priorities: getting a quarterback, getting a cornerback. We sort of skimmed over Brian Flores, but my feeling is you don't have to worry about him leaving, because I think he did a good job, but he's not going to move the needle for an owner or a fan base. Or I think, you come out, you get jobs like Dan Quinn in Dallas and what they're doing in Dallas defensively. You get jobs whenever Dan Quinn, when he's a head coach, became an idiot, and he goes to Dallas, revives that defense with some great players, and he's probably going to get a head coaching job. I think Flores, just by the nature of how the NFL works, it has to be a great or a good, really, really good to great season. It can't be kind of like the way it finished. He'll probably get interviews, but I don't see him leaving this year.
Wow. Well, that roller coaster ride is gone, hasn't it?
Well, yeah. So to me, it would be only natural that that it wouldn't result in him getting a head coaching job this year. But I think that's in his future. So now, I think he did a lot with a little, even with the way the season ended. And I think it's up to, you got to get this guy some more talent. And he proved what he could do with some, he didn't have the best corners in the world. He did a lot with a little, and if you give him a little bit more, he'll do a lot more.
Wow, that's even better news. Not only did the Vikings get the 11th position in the draft, they're going to keep Flores as a result of that loss.
You just keep losing, you'll keep everyone, Joe.
Yeah, that's right. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back and talk about prospects going forward for this team, and then hit a little bit on that season that the Vikings aren't taking part of, the NFL playoffs. You should come on back to Vikings Territory Breakdown. Okay, welcome back to Vikings Territory Breakdown with Mark Craig from the Star Tribune. Mark, what's happening? What's going to happen? What's the number one priority for the offseason for the Vikings, and what's going to happen at the QB position? I'm not going to hold you to it, but just what do you think is going to happen here with this squad?
Oh boy, number one priority is getting, sooner than later, finding out what you're going to do at quarterback. If you are and you got to get Kirk. Either if it's Kirk, you got to get him signed at whatever it is and build around him. And then it's draft a quarterback.
You think they're going to move up? I mean, 11. There's it's called the quarterback-rich draft to a certain extent. There's 6 names out there. The Vikings are picking 11th. There's probably 6 teams that could take a quarterback. I mean, if you include Chicago, who's got the first overall pick and may not be too excited yet with Justin Fields, they have a real question to answer there. So do the Vikings have to trade up? And does that then, of course, hurts their draft capital throughout the rest of the draft?
Yeah, I just don't know enough of what they have and what in order to trade up and how far they'd have to go. I just think wherever they are, whatever their ability to, whatever they're able to do, it has to be put in play, and they got to identify a quarterback. And I don't even at this point. It's like Pittsburgh 2 years ago identified, or was it last year, Pickett as a quarterback. As it was 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he was in the 20s. People probably would say, well, he wasn't worthy of a number 1 pick. The Vikings have gotten to the point where they got to make they've got to keep swinging at this quarterback, and they got to keep swinging in the draft with quarterbacks.
Jaron Hall experiment's over.
Well, to me, you keep Jaron Hall and work with him. You don't and make him your number 2, as opposed to Nick Mullins. I'd be done with Nick Mullins. It's there's just no point in going forward. To me,
Dobbs.
Well, Dobbs, I would rather see. I'd rather work with Dobbs. Dobbs, to me, as they were tumbling, was the guy that, hey, this is the guy who could probably get you out of some of this situation if you could work with him a little more. I think O'Connell is still a good coach. He's still a good offensive mind, still a good play caller. But there was a chance there for him. I had him at the top of my coach of the year, but real early after the New Orleans game. It's like, hey, they're doing some special stuff here. This is O'Connell's wheelhouse. Yeah. And then it just fell apart. And he has to take part ownership of that. And that's his strength. That's who he is. And it didn't work. And so, but the quarterback that's number 1 priority, period.
So KOC is safe for this year, but Ron Rivera from Washington and Arthur Smith from Atlanta were not. They are gone already. As this we're taping this on early morning on Monday, and Black Monday has begun. There was talk about upwards of 10 jobs being open, and if that is the case, I think Brian Flores has got to get some really heavy looks on that. I know you already answered that question, but I think I'm still concerned that he could go given the right. I don't know what opportunities are good out there. I mean, maybe you want to wait to get in a good spot, but
I mean, Jim Harbaugh is running from the law in Michigan. Yeah, so he'll either win or finish second in college football and get out of Dodge before Michigan, the hammer drops on them. Probably. I don't know enough about the situation, but the guy did get suspended for 3 games, and they're circling, and guys like him aren't going to stick around and take the medicine. So he's going to take one of these jobs. Bill Belichick, if he gets fired, is going to be like Andy Reid. Andy Reid got fired in Philadelphia and spent maybe brunch out of work and got hired in Kansas City.
That's a long time for him. Oh God, that wasn't nice. I was going to say brunch takes a long while for him. That was me. I'm kidding. I like Andy.
Yeah. So, Flores will get interviewed, sure. And Leslie Frazier was talking about he wants to get back in it. Zim wants to get back in it.
Yeah.
It might be a little, I think Leslie's 65, Zim's late 60s. I don't know if they'll get in. But yeah, there's, since 2000, there's been 34 head coaching changes since 2000. That's amazing. Rivera this morning would be 35. So yeah, it's
and Smith would be 36.
All these guys that like in Vegas, McDaniels, a year and a half. GM got a year and a half out the door. These other, Staley, during his 3rd year. Frank Reich. I mean, Frank Reich I would say go down in history as the only guy to be fired in season back-to-back years. But the way things are going, that might happen again. He doesn't make it through. Indianapolis gets fired. Carolina hires him, gives him 11 games, and he's out the door. Rivera getting 4 years in Washington is like, He's long in the tooth at that job.
Wow. Yeah, it's tough business in that regard. You got a producer, you're going to be gone. The NFL playoffs are going to happen next week with Wild Card Weekend. Or I guess they call it Super Wild Card.
Yeah. Come on, Joe. Get your talking points right.
Break.
Super Wild Card Weekend.
We got
on Monday, which is a total unfair to the teams playing on Monday, and they have to come around and play with a day less. So
right. We got we talked about the Rams and the Lions, which is quite the matchup. Packers are going to Dallas, where Dallas is pretty tough. 49ers get the week off. We got the Bucks and the Eagles. Okay, I see the Buccaneers have the home game there. The Eagles have they will right their ship down there. I don't know how I'm fascinated by the Rams and the Lions, but I don't know if Laporta plays or not, how much that hurts them. And Packers, I just hope they get beat by the Cowboys, which they probably will. But anyway.
So yeah, to me, the first game is Browns-Texans.
Oh God, he's got to go right to the AFC.
That's the first game that happens in the week. Who
cares?
To me, C.J. Stroud. I mean, he got hurt for a few games, but I don't know. This is one of the best rookie seasons ever. I mean,
he's got like 5 picks.
He has looked like a seasoned veteran from day one, and God, his accuracy, his arm strength. Talk about being able to change a franchise with one pick, and then you marry it with a defensive guy that
Nico Ryan's coach of the year.
So he's a 7-game improvement for him. But I still, there's a little growing pains. I think the Browns defense takes care of him. So the Browns win. So let's not even play that one. Green Bay going to Dallas. Good news for you is I don't think you'll have to watch the Packers very long in the playoffs. Dallas is phenomenal at home. McCarthy gets his, like
17 in a row, don't they, Mark, at home?
I don't know, but they're dominant. They're more dominant. Although at some point with the NFL, you get to when you start leaning so much one way, you're like, oh my God, they're at home. They can't lose. They're dominant. They're the greatest. They may lose 17-0 at home. Who knows? But I don't
see it after what I saw from the Bears game yesterday. They're decent. They're a remarkable team this year because they're the youngest team in the league, and they have a rookie quarterback, his first season, and he's played well, and they've come around, and they're in the playoffs, and the Vikings aren't. So hats off to them, but I think they'll run into a buzzsaw down there in Dallas.
All right, so who do you have in the first game? Browns, Texans. Got Texans?
I want the Texans, but it'll be the Browns.
Okay, so you saying Cowboys or Packers?
Cowboys.
All right, Dolphins, Chiefs. Chiefs they're vulnerable. Dolphins can score a lot, but I don't think the Chiefs are ready to give up yet. So I got Chiefs.
I think I got to go Chiefs there. They're at home, and the Dolphins got spanked yesterday, and they looked mortal in the second half, punt after punt after punt. So I got to go Chiefs there.
Rams, Lions. I got the Rams.
Wow. I'm going to, just because being a Minnesota Vikings guy, and we have had our way with the Lions all these years, I'm going to go with the Lions just for the heck of it, because I like the team. I think they made a huge mistake playing all their starters yesterday, with a couple of them getting nicked up, specifically Laporta, who's a huge part of their offense, and 2 of their rookies that have done well left the game and looked like they may not play this week. But I think Dan Campbell gets it done, and then maybe the next week they might have a little more trouble. But I'll go with the Lions just to differentiate from you.
I hope you beat me on that one. Steelers, Bills. I think the Bills will. I think the Steelers. The Steelers. They never die. But, I like the Steelers are just. I think I admire that franchise more than any in the league, because it doesn't matter, what they go through. They just always keep showing up. But I'm going to take the Bills on this one.
I will too. Their quarterback is amazing. That he he turns the ball over more than the collective quarterbacks of the Vikings, and he still finds ways to win the games and won the division for the 4th time in a row against the darling of the early season, the Dolphins. So I'm going to go with the Bills too.
Eagles and Bucks. So since I pumped up Baker Mayfield and the Eagles are completely fallen off the table, I'm going to go Bucks on that one.
I'll take Eagles.
Yeah, we have 2.
Yeah, so you won the prediction for the season, so maybe we'll have a little postseason content.
Make sure you have your mock draft ready to go next week, Joe. Wow. Or mock draft like 10.0 by next week.
By next week, yeah, I'll be working on that. I guess that should do it. We'll be back next week to talk about the playoffs, talk more about the Vikings, because in this league, you know that every week is they make news out at TCO, and hopefully it's all good news going forward. Hope it's not a Black Monday later today. But anyway, thanks, Mark. Thanks for all your insight. Thanks for putting up with me this morning, because my team got beat again, but that's okay. There's always next year.
It's over, Joe. It's over.
It's over. Thanks, Mike Woldham, producing. Thanks, Joe Johnson, for putting us here, and thanks to everybody out there for tuning in. We sure appreciate it each and every week. So we hope to see you back here next week, and we'll talk some more football. Until then, Skull.
Skull.